Marcus Thompson had always loved traveling. As a successful advertising executive, his job often took him to different corners of the world. Whether it was meeting clients in Paris or attending conferences in Tokyo, Marcus found joy in exploring new places and cultures. But on this particular day, as he settled into his seat aboard Skylux Airlines Flight 307, he had no idea that an ordinary moment would turn into something extraordinary, and not in a good way. The flight was scheduled to depart from London and land in New York after 8 hours. Marcus had booked a premium economy ticket, opting for a bit more comfort during the long journey. He liked to document his travels, not just for himself, but also because his work sometimes required him to capture moments that could inspire marketing campaigns. So like many people do these days, Marcus pulled out his phone once he got comfortable in his seat. At first, everything seemed normal. The plane was still at the gate, and passengers were busy stowing their carry-ons, flipping through magazines, or chatting quietly with one another. Marcus glanced around, taking in the familiar sights and sounds of pre-flight hustle. Then he opened his camera app. His intention was simple: take a few casual photos of his surroundings. He snapped a picture of the neatly arranged meal tray, sitting on the fold-out table in front of him. Next, he turned his lens toward the window, capturing the view of the tarmac bathed in soft morning light. It was harmless, really, just a traveler documenting his experience. But what happened next caught Marcus completely off guard. As he adjusted his phone to snap another shot, a voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, sir," came the sharp tone of a woman standing beside him. Marcus looked up to see Linda Harper, a veteran flight attendant who had been working for Skylux Airlines for over 2 decades. She wore the standard navy blue uniform, her name tag glinting under the cabin lights. Her arms were crossed tightly across her chest and her expression was stern. "Photography is not permitted during the flight," she announced loudly, drawing the attention of several nearby passengers. Marcus blinked, momentarily confused. He knew the rules. He'd even double-checked them before boarding. Personal photography was allowed unless it involved other people without their consent. There was nothing wrong with what he was doing. "I'm sorry," Marcus replied calmly, holding up his phone. "I'm just taking some pictures for myself. I checked the policy earlier, and it says personal photos are okay." Linda didn't budge. If anything, her stance grew firmer. "That's not correct, sir," she said, her voice carrying an edge that made Marcus uneasy. "You're causing a disturbance, and I need you to stop immediately." By now, a small crowd of curious onlookers had formed. Some passengers craned their necks to see what was happening, while others whispered among themselves. Marcus felt his cheeks flush. This wasn't how he'd imagined starting his trip. He tried again to explain, keeping his tone polite and measured. "I understand your concern, but I'm following the guidelines. I'm not bothering anyone." Linda's response was swift and dismissive. "Sir, if you don't comply, I'll have no choice but to involve security." Her words hung in the air like a challenge. For a brief moment, Marcus considered pushing back further. After all, he was in the right. But something about the situation gave him pause. The way Linda's eyes narrowed when she spoke to him, the condescending tilt of her head, the fact that none of the other passengers, many of whom were scrolling through their phones or reading e-books, had been singled out. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't really about the photos. It was about something deeper, something unspoken. And though he tried to push the thought aside, he couldn't ignore the sinking realization that his skin color might have played a role in how he was being treated. Reluctantly, Marcus put his phone away. "Fine," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Linda lingered for a moment longer as if to make sure he wouldn't try anything else, then walked away without another word. The hum of conversation slowly resumed around him, but Marcus felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. What should have been a routine flight had turned into an uncomfortable confrontation, one that left him questioning whether he'd ever truly feel welcome in spaces like this. For the rest of the flight, Marcus kept to himself. He stared out the window, watching clouds drift lazily past, but his mind was elsewhere. He replayed the incident over and over, wondering if there was something he could have done differently. Should he have argued more? called her out on her behavior, or maybe he should have just let it go entirely. But deep down, Marcus knew this wasn't just about him. It was about a system that allowed moments like this to happen. A system where someone like Linda could wield authority in ways that felt unfair and unjust. Little did Marcus know, this incident was only the beginning. By the time the plane touched down in New York, the wheels of change were already in motion. All it took was one tweet to set off a chain reaction that would ripple far beyond the confines of the aircraft and ultimately force Skylux Airlines to confront its own shortcomings. When Marcus finally stepped off the plane in New York, he was still reeling from the confrontation with Linda Harper. The weight of the incident lingered, making it hard for him to shake off the feeling that something deeply unfair had happened. As he made his way through the bustling airport terminal, he couldn't help but notice how ordinary everything seemed around him. People rushing to catch connecting flights, families hugging after long separations, and travelers scrolling through their phones while waiting for luggage. Yet, inside, Marcus felt anything but ordinary. Once he reached his apartment later that evening, Marcus decided to process what had happened by writing about it. He opened Twitter, a platform where he often shared insights related to his work in advertising. At first, he wasn't sure if posting about the incident was the right move. Would anyone care? Would they think he was overreacting? But as he typed out the details of what had transpired on the flight, Marcus realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about exposing a larger issue that needed attention. The tweet quickly gained traction. Within minutes, replies started pouring in. Some users expressed sympathy, sharing similar experiences of being treated unfairly while traveling. Others praised Marcus for speaking up, encouraging him to keep fighting for accountability. One reply stood out. "This isn't just about one rude flight attendant. It's about systemic racism in customer service." That comment resonated deeply with Marcus. It articulated exactly what he'd been struggling to put into words since the moment Linda confronted him. As the thread continued to grow, Marcus decided to add more context. He included screenshots of Skylux Airlines' official photography policy, clearly showing that personal photos were allowed unless they involved other passengers or crew without consent. To further illustrate his point, he posted a photo he'd taken mid-flight, a candid shot of himself looking slightly awkward as Linda loomed over him with crossed arms. The image struck a chord with viewers. It captured the tension of the situation perfectly, highlighting the disparity between Marcus's calm demeanor and Linda's aggressive posture. Within hours, the tweet went viral. Thousands of people retweeted it, adding their own thoughts and reactions. Influencers with massive followings joined the conversation, amplifying Marcus's voice even further. Hashtags like Justice for Marcus and Skylux Accountability began trending across social media platforms. Journalists reached out to interview him, eager to cover the story from every angle. Suddenly, Marcus found himself at the center of a nationwide discussion about discrimination and corporate responsibility. But the backlash didn't stop there. As the story spread, others came forward with their own accounts of mistreatment on Skylux flights. A young woman recounted how she'd been scolded for breastfeeding her baby during a long-haul journey. A college student described being denied access to the restroom despite repeated requests. And several Black passengers shared stories eerily, similar to Marcus's, detailing instances where they'd been singled out or treated poorly by Skylux staff. These testimonials painted a troubling picture of an airline culture riddled with bias and inconsistency. Amidst the growing outrage, leaked internal documents added fuel to the fire. Anonymous sources within Skylux revealed that Linda Harper had previously faced disciplinary action for similar incidents involving non-white passengers. According to the reports, she had been warned multiple times about her abrasive behavior, but remained employed due to her seniority and tenure with the company. This revelation shocked many, prompting calls for not only Linda's termination but also a complete overhaul of Skylux's training and hiring practices. As public pressure mounted, major brands took notice. Nexora Global, a tech conglomerate, worth billions, announced it was severing ties with Skylux. The partnership, valued at $2 billion, was intended to promote Nexora's new line of travel accessories, a deal that would have significantly boosted Skylux's revenue and reputation. In a strongly worded statement, Nexora cited Skylux's failure to uphold values of inclusivity and respect as the primary reason for backing out. "We believe in creating environments where everyone feels welcome," the statement read. Unfortunately, recent events have shown that Skylux does not share our commitment to equality. The financial blow sent shockwaves through Skylux's leadership team. Investors grew nervous, stock prices dipped, and employees braced themselves for potential layoffs. For a company already struggling to recover from pandemic-related setbacks, losing such a lucrative contract was devastating. CEO Eleanor Whitmore called an emergency meeting with executives, demanding immediate solutions to address the crisis. Behind closed doors, tensions ran high as leaders debated how best to salvage the airline's tarnished image. Despite the chaos unfolding behind the scenes, Marcus remained focused on using his platform for good. He began appearing on podcasts and news programs, sharing his perspective on systemic issues within the aviation industry. Each appearance brought fresh waves of support from people who admired his courage and determination. Fans flooded his mentions with messages of encouragement, thanking him for shining a light on problems that had long gone unaddressed. One particularly memorable interaction occurred during a live television interview. When asked how he planned to move forward, Marcus smiled thoughtfully before responding. "I don't want this to be about me versus Skylux," he said. "I want it to be about creating change, not just for this airline, but for all companies that interact with diverse groups of people. If my experience can spark meaningful conversations and lead to real progress, then I'll consider it a win." His words resonated far beyond the studio audience, striking a chord with viewers around the world. People began organizing petitions, rallies, and online campaigns to demand accountability from Skylux. Activist groups partnered with Marcus to host virtual town halls, inviting experts to discuss topics like implicit bias, workplace discrimination, and consumer rights. What started as a single tweet had evolved into a global movement, one that showed no signs of slowing down. By the end of the week, it was clear that Marcus's story had touched a nerve. Millions of people were talking about it, debating it, and taking action because of it. While the road ahead promised challenges, Marcus felt hopeful. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to imagine a future where airlines and corporations, in general, would prioritize inclusivity and fairness above all else. Little did he know the hardest battles were yet to come, but armed with resilience and a growing army of supporters, Marcus was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The whirlwind of attention surrounding Marcus's story showed no signs of slowing down. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure on Skylux Airlines intensified. The company's initial response, a generic apology posted on their official social media accounts, did little to quell the growing outrage. In fact, it only made things worse. Customers were quick to point out that the statement lacked sincerity and failed to address the root cause of the problem: systemic discrimination within the airline. Skylux's leadership team found themselves in a precarious position. On one hand, they couldn't ignore the mounting backlash from customers, employees, and major stakeholders like Nexora Global. On the other hand, they risked alienating longtime staff members if they acted too hastily or harshly. CEO Eleanor Whitmore knew that finding the right balance would be critical, not just for salvaging the airline's reputation, but for ensuring its survival in an increasingly competitive industry. Behind closed doors, the executive team held marathon meetings to strategize their next steps. Legal advisors warned them about potential lawsuits stemming from both Marcus's case and the flood of similar complaints pouring in. Public relations experts urged them to take bold action before the narrative spiraled further out of control. Meanwhile, marketing teams scrambled to draft new messaging campaigns aimed at rebuilding trust with passengers. After much deliberation, Skylux decided to issue a more comprehensive response. This time, they opted for a video statement featuring Eleanor Whitmore herself. Dressed in a crisp navy blue suit that mirrored the airline's branding, She appeared calm yet contrite as she addressed the camera. "First and foremost, I want to personally apologize to Mr. Marcus Thompson and to all of our valued customers who have felt disrespected or mistreated while flying with us," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "What happened on Flight 307 is unacceptable, and we are committed to making sure it never happens again." Eleanor went on to outline a series of measures the airline planned to implement immediately. These included placing Linda Harper, the flight attendant at the center of the controversy, on administrative leave pending a full investigation into her conduct. Sources close to the situation later confirmed that termination was likely inevitable, given the severity of the incident and her history of problematic behavior. While some critics argued that this move came too late, others acknowledged it as a necessary first step toward accountability. In addition to addressing Linda's role, Eleanor announced sweeping reforms designed to foster a more inclusive workplace culture. All employees from ground staff to senior management would undergo mandatory diversity and inclusion training. The curriculum would focus not only on recognizing implicit bias, but also on equipping workers with tools to handle conflicts respectfully and fairly. Furthermore, Skylux pledged to establish an independent review board tasked with investigating passenger complaints related to discrimination or misconduct. This body would operate separately from the airline's internal departments, ensuring transparency and impartiality. To demonstrate their commitment to change, Skylux also unveiled plans to revamp their customer service protocols. New guidelines emphasized empathy, patience, and clear communication when interacting with passengers. Employees were encouraged to de-escalate tense situations rather than exacerbate them, and strict consequences were outlined for anyone found violating these principles. Additionally, the airline launched a feedback hotline where travelers could share their experiences anonymously, providing valuable insights into areas needing improvement. While these efforts signaled progress, not everyone was convinced. Skeptics questioned whether Skylux's actions were genuine or merely performative, a desperate attempt to save face amid plummeting profits and public scrutiny. Some pointed out that companies often roll out flashy initiatives during crises, only to abandon them once the spotlight fades. Others criticized the lack of immediate consequences for higher-ups who may have enabled problematic behaviors within the organization. Despite the skepticism, there were undeniable signs of positive momentum. Passengers reported noticeable changes during subsequent flights. Flight attendants greeted travelers with warm smiles and friendly greetings, going above and beyond to ensure comfort and satisfaction. Crew members actively sought feedback, asking how they could improve the overall experience. Even small gestures like offering extra snacks or helping passengers stow heavy luggage left lasting impressions on those accustomed to indifferent service. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to play an active role in holding Skylux accountable. He remained vocal on social media, sharing updates about the airline's progress while calling out areas where improvements were still needed. When journalists asked him about the effectiveness of Skylux's reforms, he responded thoughtfully. "It's easy to make promises after a crisis," he said, "but real change takes time, effort, and consistency. I'm cautiously optimistic because I see people genuinely trying to do better. That gives me hope." His measured approach earned him even more respect from supporters and detractors alike. Rather than vilifying Skylux outright, Marcus advocated for constructive dialogue between consumers and corporations. He believed that meaningful transformation required collaboration, not condemnation, and he worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between the two sides. One particularly impactful moment came when Marcus accepted an invitation to speak at a high-profile aviation conference. Standing on stage before hundreds of industry leaders, he delivered a powerful keynote address that left attendees buzzing. Drawing from his own experience, he highlighted the importance of fostering environments where everyone feels seen, heard, and respected. "Diversity isn't just a buzzword," he declared. "It's a mindset. It's about understanding that every person brings unique perspectives and value to the table. When we embrace that truth, we create opportunities for growth, not just for ourselves but for the entire community." His words resonated deeply, sparking conversations that extended far beyond the conference hall. Attendees exchanged ideas about implementing similar reforms within their own organizations, inspired by Marcus's vision of a more equitable future. For many, it was a wake-up call, a reminder that businesses exist not only to generate revenue but also to serve humanity. Back at Skylux headquarters, Eleanor Whitmore watched a recording of Marcus's speech with a mix of admiration and determination. She realized that restoring trust wouldn't happen overnight, but she was willing to put in the work. Under her leadership, the airline began rolling out additional initiatives aimed at promoting inclusivity. They partnered with advocacy groups to develop educational resources for employees, launched mentorship programs for underrepresented communities, and donated a portion of ticket sales to organizations fighting racial injustice. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Customer satisfaction ratings improved, employee morale rose, and partnerships with brands like Nexora Global started to re-emerge on the horizon. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, Skylux had taken crucial steps toward becoming a company that truly reflected the values it claimed to uphold. For Marcus, watching these changes unfold brought a sense of fulfillment he hadn't anticipated. While the incident on Flight 307 had been painful, it had also sparked a movement, one that transcended individual grievances and touched lives across the globe. As he prepared for his next trip, Marcus couldn't help but smile. He knew the fight wasn't over, but he also knew that every small victory counted. And for now, that was enough. Months had passed since the incident on Flight 307, and Marcus Thompson found himself reflecting on how much his life, and the world around him, had changed. What started as a simple act of taking photos aboard a plane had snowballed into a movement that challenged an entire industry to rethink its values. While Skylux Airlines worked diligently to repair its fractured image, Marcus emerged as an unexpected figurehead for change, using his platform to advocate for fairness and inclusivity in ways he never imagined. Skylux's efforts to transform were undeniable. The airline rolled out sweeping reforms aimed at addressing systemic issues within its operations. Employees underwent rigorous diversity training programs designed not just to check boxes, but to foster genuine understanding. Role-playing scenarios taught staff how to handle sensitive situations with empathy, while workshops highlighted the importance of recognizing unconscious biases. For many employees, these sessions were eye-opening. Longtime flight attendants admitted they'd never considered how their tone or body language might affect passengers differently based on race, gender, or background. But the changes didn't stop there. Skylux introduced new policies to ensure transparency and accountability. The independent review board Eleanor Whitmore had promised became a reality, composed of external experts in civil rights, psychology, and customer service. This board operated independently from the airline's internal structure, giving passengers confidence that their complaints would be handled fairly. Flyers could now report incidents through multiple channels, a dedicated hotline, email, or even an anonymous online form, without fear of retaliation or dismissal. To rebuild trust with customers, Skylux also launched a massive rebranding campaign. Gone were the sterile advertisements featuring cookie-cutter families smiling aboard pristine aircraft. Instead, the airline embraced authentic storytelling, showcasing real people from diverse backgrounds sharing their travel experiences. One ad followed a young black woman traveling solo across Europe, capturing moments of joy and self-discovery. Another highlighted a multi-generational Asian family reuniting in Hawaii after years apart. These stories resonated deeply with audiences, reminding them why flying was more than just transportation. It was about connection, adventure, and possibility. For Marcus, watching this transformation unfold was both gratifying and surreal. He attended several events hosted by Skylux to celebrate their progress, including a gala where Eleanor Whitmore personally thanked him for holding the company accountable. "You didn't just shine a light on our shortcomings," she said during her speech. "You gave us a roadmap for becoming better, not just as an airline, but as human beings." Her words brought applause from the crowd, but Marcus felt a mix of pride and humility. He knew the work wasn't finished, but seeing tangible results made him hopeful for the future. Beyond Skylux, Marcus's influence extended far beyond what anyone could have predicted. Brands across industries began reaching out to him, eager to learn how they could adopt similar principles of inclusivity and accountability. Tech companies invited him to consult on product designs that catered to underserved communities. Retail giants sought his advice on creating marketing campaigns that celebrated diversity without tokenizing it. Even schools reached out asking if he'd speak to students about leadership and advocacy. Marcus approached these opportunities with the same thoughtfulness and determination that defined his journey so far. He turned down lucrative endorsement, deals that felt superficial, choosing instead to partner with organizations aligned with his values. One such collaboration involved working with a nonprofit focused on mentoring minority youth interested in careers in advertising. Together, they created workshops teaching kids how to tell compelling stories through visuals and words. Watching these young minds light up with creativity reminded Marcus why he loved his profession and why representation mattered so much. Despite the accolades and opportunities, Marcus remained grounded. He continued to document his travels, posting photos and reflections on social media. But now his captions carried deeper meaning. Alongside stunning landscapes and candid snapshots, he shared insights about the places he visited, their histories, cultures, and struggles. Followers appreciated this blend of beauty and substance, often commenting that his posts inspired them to see the world through a more empathetic lens. Not everything was smooth sailing, though. Critics still questioned whether Skylux's reforms were sustainable or merely a temporary fix to appease public outrage. Some pointed out that true change required dismantling entrenched systems of privilege and power, something no amount of training or rebranding could fully achieve. Others argued that placing too much emphasis on individual cases like Marcus's risked overshadowing broader structural issues within the aviation industry. Marcus acknowledged these concerns openly. During interviews and panel discussions, he emphasized the importance of vigilance. "Change is messy," he often said. "It's uncomfortable, imperfect, and ongoing. We can't afford to pat ourselves on the back and call it a day. Real progress means constantly challenging ourselves to do better." His honesty earned him even more respect. People admired his ability to balance optimism with realism, celebrating victories while staying mindful of the road ahead. It was this authenticity that kept his audience engaged, not just as passive observers but as active participants in the conversation. One particularly memorable moment came when Marcus returned to Skylux for another flight months later. As he boarded the plane, a representative greeted him warmly, apologizing once again for the past incident and thanking him for inspiring positive change. The gesture caught Marcus off guard, but he accepted it graciously. Throughout the flight, he noticed subtle yet significant differences in the crew's demeanor. They interacted with passengers respectfully, offering assistance without hesitation and going out of their way to make everyone feel valued. When the plane landed, Marcus tweeted about his experience, praising the improvements he'd witnessed. His post quickly went viral, sparking renewed interest in Skylux's transformation. Passengers shared their own stories of positive interactions with the airline, reinforcing the idea that change was possible, even in industries resistant to. As Marcus stepped off the plane, he paused for a moment, taking in the bustling airport terminal around him. Travelers hurried past, dragging suitcases and chatting animatedly. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed as their parent scooped them into a hug. Life moved forward, as it always did. But for Marcus, each step felt heavier with purpose. He knew the fight for equality was far from over, but he also knew that every small victory counted. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers bound together by shared journeys, Marcus allowed himself to believe that the world was slowly becoming a kinder, fairer place, one flight at a time. The ripple effect of Marcus Thompson's experience continued to spread, shaping not just Skylux Airlines but the entire aviation industry and beyond. What began as a single incident on a routine flight had evolved into a catalyst for transformation, proving that even the smallest actions could spark monumental change. For Marcus, the journey wasn't just about holding one company accountable. It was about creating a blueprint for how businesses could embrace inclusivity and accountability in meaningful ways. Skylux Airlines became a case study in corporate redemption. The reforms they implemented were no longer seen as isolated efforts, but as part of a broader cultural shift within the company. Passengers noticed these changes almost immediately. Flight attendants greeted travelers with genuine warmth, making an effort to remember names and preferences. Crew members actively sought feedback, asking questions like, "Is there anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable?" These small gestures added up, transforming what had once been a transactional experience into something deeply personal. Behind the scenes, Skylux doubled down on its commitment to diversity and inclusion. They expanded their hiring practices to ensure representation at every level of the organization, from entry-level positions to executive roles. Employee resource groups, ERGs, sprang up across departments, providing safe spaces for workers to share experiences and advocate for change. Monthly town halls allowed staff to voice concerns directly to leadership, fostering transparency and trust. Even passengers began noticing differences. Flight crews now reflected the same diversity as the people they served, sending a powerful message that everyone belonged. The airline's rebranding campaign also gained momentum, earning praise from both customers and critics. Advertisements featuring real stories resonated deeply, inspiring competitors to rethink their own strategies. Other airlines started incorporating similar themes into their marketing, highlighting underrepresented voices and celebrating global cultures. Industry conferences buzzed with discussions about how to create more inclusive environments. With Marcus frequently invited to speak, his insights became invaluable, offering practical advice on bridging gaps between corporations and communities. But perhaps the most profound impact came from the conversations Marcus sparked outside the aviation world. His advocacy inspired individuals and organizations to examine their own biases and practices. Schools incorporated his story into curriculums, teaching students about systemic racism and the power of speaking out against injustice. Corporations hosted workshops modeled after Skylux's training programs, encouraging employees to confront uncomfortable truths and work toward solutions. Nonprofits partnered with Marcus to launch initiatives aimed at empowering marginalized groups, ensuring his influence reached far beyond social media. Despite the progress, challenges remained. Some skeptics argued that Skylux's transformation was still incomplete, pointing to lingering disparities in passenger treatment or occasional missteps by staff. Others questioned whether the airline's efforts were sustainable over the long term. Would the lessons learned fade once public attention shifted elsewhere? Marcus acknowledged these concerns openly, reminding audiences that change required constant vigilance. "We're building a foundation," he often said during interviews. "It's strong, but it needs reinforcement. Progress isn't linear, it's a continuous process." To keep the momentum going, Marcus collaborated with Skylux on a groundbreaking initiative, the Passenger Empowerment Program. This program gave travelers tools to report issues discreetly and receive timely resolutions. It also provided resources for educating passengers about their rights, empowering them to advocate for themselves when faced with unfair treatment. The initiative received widespread acclaim, with other airlines adopting similar measures. For Marcus, this was proof that collaboration could drive lasting impact. As time went on, Marcus found himself reflecting on his own growth. He had entered this journey as a reluctant activist, thrust into the spotlight by circumstances beyond his control. But along the way, he discovered a passion for advocacy that transformed his life. His advertising career flourished as brands sought his expertise in crafting campaigns rooted in authenticity and empathy. Speaking engagements took him to new places, introducing him to people who shared his vision of a more equitable world. Through it all, he remained grounded, prioritizing family, friends, and moments of quiet reflection. One evening, while preparing for yet another trip, Marcus sat by his window overlooking the city skyline. The lights twinkled below, a reminder of the countless lives touched by his story. He thought about the passengers who felt seen for the first time, the employees inspired to speak up, and the children learning to dream bigger because someone showed them it was possible. Each of these moments was a thread in a tapestry woven together by courage, perseverance, and hope. When Marcus boarded his next flight, a red-eye to Los Angeles, he couldn't help but smile. As he settled into his seat, a familiar face approached, Linda Harper. She looked different now, her posture relaxed and her expression warm. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, extending a hand. "I want to personally apologize for my behavior. I've learned so much since then, and I'm truly sorry for how I treated you." Marcus hesitated for a moment before shaking her hand. "Thank you," he replied simply. There was no need for lengthy explanations or dramatic reconciliation. In that brief exchange, they both understood that forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about acknowledging growth and moving forward together. By the time the plane landed, Marcus felt lighter, as if the weight he'd carried for so long had finally lifted. He knew the road ahead would have its bumps, but he also knew he wasn't walking it alone. Countless others, passengers, employees, advocates, were joining him, each contributing to a collective effort to build a better future. As Marcus stepped off the plane, he glanced back at the aircraft, its sleek design gleaming under the airport lights. It was more than just a mode of transportation. It was a symbol of connection, possibility, and resilience. And though the journey had been challenging, Marcus couldn't imagine trading it for anything else. After all, it was through adversity that he, and so many others, had found their wings.